graph a parabola, we're going to combine all the things that we've been working on. So let's start with our vertex. Remember, this is our A, our B, and our C. To find our vertex, we use x equals negative b over 2a. So b is negative 8, but there's also a negative in front of the b. A is 1, so negative 8 becomes positive 8. 2 times 1 is 2. So our axis of symmetry is 4. When you have to graph this on your own, your graph will not be pre-made. I showed you the key on here so that you don't have to look at my messy handwriting and decipher where this should be. So this is my axis of symmetry. I know that the vertex is going to fall somewhere on that point. That is the middle of my parabola. To find the vertex, I'm going to substitute into the equation, so it becomes 4 squared minus 8 times 4 plus 19. 4 squared is 16, 8 times 4 is 32, and I need to add 19. 16 minus 32 is negative 16, and negative 16 plus 19 is 3. That tells me that my vertex is at the point 4, 3. This wouldn't already be here when you do your own. I would have to know to put my vertex at x equals 4, 3. Now it says 2 points to the left of the vertex and 2 points to the right of the vertex. So sometimes those could be zeros, but let's look at what happens when I try to use my quadratic formula. To find my zeros, I can either factor or use quadratic formula. My quadratic formula, is going to be negative b, so that's 8, plus or minus the square root of b squared plus negative 4 times a times c all over 2 times a. But let's look and see what happens to our discriminant here. This is 8 plus or minus the square root of 64 plus negative 4 times 1 times 19, which becomes negative 76 all over 2. So then I have 8 plus or minus the square root of 64 minus 76, which is negative 12 all over 2. Well, if you remember from the last lesson, the discriminant is a negative. There are no zeros. So I'm going to have to find another way. So I want you to remember, first of all, that we're looking at symmetry. I can come up with the opposite on each side using mirroring if I can remember to do that. So let's look at my axis of symmetry, and I'm going to go 1 point to the left. So my axis of symmetry is at 4. I'm going to see what y is equal to when x is 3. So that's 3 squared minus 8 times 3 plus 19. So that's 9 minus 24 plus 19. And that becomes 9 minus 24 plus 19, which is 4. That tells me that when I substitute in a 3, I get 4. So 1 point on my curve is 3, 4. And I can use the axis of symmetry. That point is 1 space from the axis of symmetry on the left. I'm going to go 1 space from the axis of symmetry on the right. And I can see that the point 5, 4 is also on the curve. So I've used 4, that's my axis of symmetry. I've used 3, that gave me the point 3, 4. Let's use 2. If I substitute in 2, it becomes 2 squared minus 8 times 2 plus 19. So that becomes 4 minus 16 plus 19. 4 minus 16 plus 19 becomes 7. So that tells me when I substitute in 2, I get 7. So that's this point here. And again, I don't have to do those calculations all over again. That is 2 spaces from the axis of symmetry on the left. 2 places from the axis of symmetry on the right is 6, 7. That gives me the vertex, 2 points to the left of the vertex and 2 points to the right of the vertex, and that graphs my function. You pause the video and try this one on your own. Remember, you won't already have the parabola here. This is just here to show you what we should be getting as we go. When you do this on your own, it will be a blank graph to start, and you'll have to place the points. So you should have started with negative b over 2a to get your axis of symmetry. So that should have been negative 8 over 2 times 1. That's negative 8 divided by 2, which is negative 4. So my axis of symmetry, the middle, is right here. So now I want the y value that matches with that. So that's y equals negative 4 squared plus 8 times negative 4 plus 21. Watch your negative. A negative times a negative becomes a positive. A positive times a negative becomes a negative. 16 minus 32 plus 21 is positive 5. So that tells me that my vertex is at negative 4 comma 5, so I would put a point right there. Now we want 2 points to the left and 2 points to the right. I can either use negative 5 or negative 3. I'm going to use negative 3 just because it's smaller, and I'm going to substitute it in. So this becomes negative 3 squared plus 8 times negative 3 plus 21. Notice it doesn't ask me for the zeros. That's because there aren't any. So we have 9 minus 24 plus 21. 9 minus 24 is negative 15. Negative 15 plus 21 is 6. So when I substituted in negative 3, I got negative 3 comma 6, which is right there. My axis of symmetry is in the middle. If this point is one space from the axis of symmetry, there's a point on the other side that mirrors it. So I've used negative 4, then I use negative 3. I don't want to use negative 5. I've already got a point there. Let's try negative 2. So that's negative 2 squared plus 8 times negative 2 plus 21. Negative 2 squared is 4. 8 times negative 2 is negative 16. So 4 plus negative 16 plus 21 becomes 9. So when I substituted in negative 2, I got 9. So that's negative 2 comma 9. This is 2 spaces here. So 2 spaces here would be the point negative 6 comma 9. So again, I use negative b over 2a to get my axis of symmetry. I substituted in to get my vertex. So my vertex was at negative 4 comma 5. And then I chose numbers that were close to the axis of symmetry to substitute in, and used mirroring to get the points on the opposite side. All right, so now let's see. We're going to find the vertex. So that's negative b over 2a. So that's negative 18 over 2 times negative 3. That's negative 18 over negative 6, and that's positive 3. That tells me that the middle of this parabola cuts right through here. All right, you see if you can figure out what to do next. We've got the axis of symmetry. How do we get the vertex? Pause the video and see if you can find your vertex now. All right, you should have remembered that we use our axis of symmetry to find our vertex using substitution. So we substituted into the original equation. 3 squared is 9. 9 times negative 3 is negative 27. 18 times 3 becomes positive 54. And I bring down the minus 24. Negative 27 plus 54 minus 24 gives me 3. So that means when I substitute 3 in, I get 3 for the vertex. So there it is right there. All right, remember I want things that are close to the vertex. So I've already used 3. Let's use 2 now. If I substitute 2 into the equation, it looks like this. I'm replacing x with 2. Order of operations says to square first. 2 squared is 4, and 4 times negative 3 is negative 12. 18 times 2 is 36, and we bring down the minus 24. Negative 12 plus 36 minus 24 becomes 0. So that means when I substitute in 2, I get 0, and that's that point right there. If I use the fact that this is a mirror image, this is one space from the axis of symmetry. So on the opposite side, one space from the axis of symmetry is another point. So we've used 3 for the axis of symmetry. We used 2 to get the next point. Let's use 1 to get another point. So this is negative 3 times 1 squared plus 18 times 1 minus 24. That becomes negative 3 because 1 squared is 1 and 1 times negative 3 is negative 3. 18 times 1 is 18, and we bring down the minus 24. So this becomes negative 3 plus 18 minus 24, which gives me negative 9. So when I substitute in 1, I get negative 9. So that's the point 1 comma negative 9. If I use the fact that this is 2 spaces from the axis of symmetry on the left, there should be another point 2 spaces from the axis of symmetry on the right. And there it is. And then you would graph that and fill in your curve. All right, same idea. We want to find our vertex first. Our vertex is negative b over 2a. You see if you can find that now. So that should become negative 12 over 2 times 2. A negative 12 becomes positive 12. 2 times 2 becomes 4. And 12 divided by 4 is 3. That tells me that my axis of symmetry cuts right through the middle there. To figure out what the y value is that matches with that, I substitute in 3 for x. So this becomes 2 times 9 minus 36 plus 16. 2 times 9 is 18. 18 minus 36 plus 16. 18 minus 36 plus 16 becomes negative 2. So that tells me that my vertex is 3 comma negative 2, which is that point right there. All right, again, I'm looking for numbers that are close to the vertex. So the axis of symmetry was at 3. Let's go 1 away from 3 and see what happens when we make x equal to 2. So that's 2 times 2 squared minus 12 times 2 plus 16. 2 squared is 4. 4 times 2 is 8. 12 times 2 is 24 plus 16. 8 minus 24 plus 16 becomes 0. So that tells me that I have a point at 2 comma 0. And on the opposite side, 1 space away at 4 comma 0. One more point, I've already used where the axis of symmetry was x equals 3. 1 to the left was 2. Another 1 to the left will be 1. So that's 2 times 1 squared minus 12 times 1 plus 16. 1 squared is 1. 1 times 2 is 2. It is not 2 squared, it is 1 squared. 1 times 1 is 1. 1 times 2 is 2. Minus 12 plus 16. 2 minus 12 plus 16 becomes 6. So that tells me when I substitute in 1, I get 6, which is why this point is here. 2 spaces from the left means that on the other side, 2 spaces on the right should be another mirrored point. All right, new topic. Maximum or minimum. When you have a word problem, don't get overwhelmed. When you see the words maximum or minimum, that is your clue to use the vertex. So this says, a medical equipment industry manufactures X-ray machines. The unit cost is C, and X stands for the number of machines that are made. It says, what is the minimum unit cost? Well, let's start with our axis of symmetry. X equals negative b over 2a. It says do not round. So we've got negative 576 divided by 2 times 0.9. That becomes positive 576 divided by 2 times 0.9, which is 1.8. We're going to divide 576 by 1.8, and I get 320. Now remember, this is X. X is the number of machines. That's the minimum number of machines, not the minimum cost. To find the minimum cost, I have to substitute 320 into the function. So this becomes 0.9 times 320 squared minus 576 times 320 plus 99,960. Order of operations says we square first, so I do 320 squared, and that gives me 102,400 times 0.9 gives me 92,160. Negative 576 times 320 gives me negative 184,320 plus 99,960. Now I just simplify 92160 minus 184,320 plus 99960 and hit enter. And the minimum cost is 7,800. So the minimum number of machines to make is 320, but the minimum cost is 7,800. There are two variables here. We have to look and make sure we know what it's asking for. You pause the video and try this one on your own. Hint, hint, if you're stuck. You should have noticed that you're missing something. You've got your a squared, which is negative 16t squared. You've got your b, which is 48t. You're missing your constant, so you should use 0. So this is your a, your b, and your c. See if you can continue on from there, doing negative b over 2a. All right, this should have become negative 48 over 2 times negative 16. That's negative 48 over negative 32. They don't want us to round, so 48 divided by 32 gives me 1.5 because a negative times or divided by a negative is a positive. Remember, this is whatever our variable is, which is t. So it doesn't ask what is the maximum time, it asks what is the maximum height. So that's going to be 1.5 seconds. To find the height, I have to substitute back in. So it's negative 16 times 1.5 squared plus 48 times 1.5 plus 0. I'm going to square first. 1.5x squared is 2.25 times negative 16 becomes negative 36. 48 times 1.5 is 72. Just bring down the plus 0, and that becomes 36 feet. So the maximum height is 36 feet. So again, anytime you're asked for the maximum or the minimum, you take your axis of symmetry and you substitute it in to find your maximum height or time or cost or whatever it is that they're asking for. And you're done. I know this was a long one today. This video will be available on Haiku if you need to rewatch, and will be available on each skill for Module 15 and ALEKS. You should now complete Module 15 practice problems by selecting Continue My Path. Don't forget you can get an explanation for each type of problem, and these explanations are pretty good for Mod 15, so make sure you take a look at those. And make sure that you are doing Quiz 15 when you're done.